Hi everyone, welcome to the 8th episode of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Roslyn Miner, and tonight we are talking about critical discussion on mental health. Tonight's discussion is the modern day mental health crisis, and I believe it's a topic that each and every one of us can relate to. Tonight I am joined by registered nurse Amos Kagiri. Amos is a medical profession, but he is also the managing director of Mayhill Training Institute. And today he joins us as we cover mental health crisis, and everything in between. So, as per the norm, we start off by going through a couple of statistics on mental health, and they're very interesting statistics to be very honest. So one of them is, as of 2022, WHO had a survey, and 1 in 8 people globally, approximately 970 million globally, that's the global population. So 1 in 8 people live with a mental health condition. 280 people worldwide are suffering from depression, and 300 million globally are dealing with anxiety disorders. Suicide is the fourth leading cause of death amongst 15 to 29-year-old worldwide. Now, let's come closer home to Africa. 116 million people are estimated to be living with a mental health condition. And the sad thing is that less than 10% of African countries have mental health legislation that is compliant with human rights. Even sadder is that in Africa, Africa has one psychiatrist per 500,000 people on average. And the global average is 1 is to 10,000. If I come even closer home to Kenya, 1 in 4 Kenyans seek outpatient care present with a mental condition, health condition. And we only have about 100 psychiatrists in Kenya that are licensed to serve a population of more than 50 million. So we can see that the statistics show a sad, dire situation that we really need to put effort when it comes to mental health. And in the current modern world where there's a lot of technology, everything is moving too fast, the pressures are there, we really need to look at the modern crisis. So Amos, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And let's have this discussion, this very, very critical discussion on mental health. Karibu sana.
Asante. Thank you so much, Rosaline. Nakamura and Consulting Limited. Thank you so much for the platform. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a gap, it's a conversation we must have, but unfortunately, or by bad luck, but we are running away from having that conversation the right way. And thank you so much for this platform. Thank you for laying down the statistics that are actually gonna give us the basis of the discussion today, because they are so insightful. Data informs us in almost all decisions. You're in HR, you might agree with that. Data actually informs most of our decisions that we make, and if we do not rely on data, then a lot can be missed. Look even at financial decisions, even budgeting, even at national level, even at ministry level. Without the data, we cannot be able to finance or budget for a specific sector like mental health. It's unfortunate that those statistics are that bad, and especially when you come down home, the ratio of psychiatrists to the Kenyans that they serve. Some counties actually are surviving without a resident psychiatrist. They have to poach a psychiatrist to come maybe once in a month. There's so many counties that are doing that right now, today in this world. It's unfortunate, but it's happening. Allow me to first demystify what is mental health so that we are all on the same page. Because I remember some time back when I was having one of the physical trainings on peer counseling. When I was sending invites and someone would say, I'm not mentally ill, so I don't see why I should come to that platform. In layman's or in the simplest language, and I'll borrow from the WHO definition of mental health. There are two definitions, but I think we can work with one. That says for you to actually say you're mentally healthy, you must be able to tick around 4 or 5 boxes. And one of those boxes is the ability to know your abilities. Is that too repetitive? You must be able to know your abilities. This is about your self-awareness, self-concept, self-confidence. How much aware are you about yourself? When we get, or you as a HR, when you get to ask the interviewee, what are your strengths and your weaknesses? How best can they answer this question? How best do we know about our emotional intelligence and how aware are we of our emotions even at the current moment? The second box that we should be able to tick is the ability to give back or build the community towards community development. And also we should be able to usually for why am I missing the others? I'll check them. But usually, yeah, there is another definition that says for you to actually say you're mentally healthy, you must be spiritually healthy, socially healthy, psychologically healthy, and emotionally healthy. So you see, it is catering a lot of aspects of your mental wellness. You must be able to actually, and that's why when you look at Shakahola incident in Kilifi, you get to question their mental wellness because it touches on your spiritual health as well. Social wellness is about friendships, families, relatives, and all that, the social life per se. And so when someone says, for me, I cannot get married because men are, this, or women are this, then you get to question your social wellness. And in general, then you get to question your mental health and so many other things that we talk about. Now, on the discussion today, it's a very catchy topic, the modern day mental health crisis. It is a crisis, to be honest. It is a huge, huge crisis. Then, when you look at the releases by the WHO and other international bodies, they actually acknowledge that mental health is really, really a huge problem. The common question I've found people asking is why is it that it is a crisis today, but it wasn't there before? When you look at the statistics today, they weren't as bad as they were when you go back to the vintage eras, the 90s, the 80s, and the likes. The statistics weren't that bad, but you still had, a good number of people worldwide and all that. So what is happening? What has changed? What is the problem that we are not able to identify or work around with? And actually, to be honest, one of the key factors, there could be many factors. Actually, there are very many factors, but one of the key factors that have made us go to where or land where we are at is the family. Because the family of back then is not the family of today. Rosalind, today, if you and I, for example, when we have a crisis, family in most of the cases, not all, but in most of the cases, the relatives are actually close to the last ones to get to know the information. When everything else, goes out and all that. So we don't see our family as our shoulder to lean on at first. Unlike long time ago, where everything was within the family, you are even, uncles and aunties are still within the clan or the compound. And so if uh, even if it's a female who gets pregnant outside the marriage or before getting married, she can run to the auntie within the compound and they can sort the issue out. An uncle gets unemployed, she comes back to the compound. The family is aware of the same they come through because they know even if my children do not have something to eat or bite, then I can send them to my brother's house or my sister's house and that will be sorted. In today's world, that's not the same. Some people, and especially when you look at the Gen Z, have tried to redefine the family and say family is not actually defined by blood. It's a society that you create for yourself, which to some extent is.
It's true.
Um, so yeah, we having that problem whereby some even do not have that you can call a family. Someone is going through a whole complete phase of life by themselves. We do not have that person you can call to or you can lean back to, or they're actually there, but we do not want to be vulnerable, or we are not able, not even want, we are not able to be vulnerable at a personal point of view.
But even
That
maybe the devil's advocate. for a minute. For the longest time, I don't think previously we appreciated what mental health is. It was pretty much, deal with your own problems and yeah, kneel by mouth. So the statistics of back in the day may not be actually be providing
accurate.
the right, yeah, the actual picture on the ground because people have been suffering. I mean, as it stands, if I may use one example, how we raise our sons, how our brothers have been raised, the boys have been raised, you're a man, men don't cry. So if something happens to you and you are processing your emotions, if you cry, it is actually deemed as a weakness. And the truth of the matter is, someone actually needs to cry. So I think there has been a very huge misconception about mental health. And we failed to appreciate what positive mental well being is. And that's why maybe at the moment you will find people are actually closer with their friends than they are with their blood relatives because you have actually come to see, yeah, your family by blood, but beyond that there's nothing, there's nothing more you can add to it. So it's a very interesting conversation because it doesn't mean that all families are bad, but we know
True.
very well that there are those situations that you will not get that support. So as we define, who family is, who our support system is, I think it also impacts, what positive or the right mental well-being is all about.
Very true. Very true. I totally agree with you. Number one, the data has really changed. We have really improved on how much data we're able to gather today, unlike long time ago. Number two, what is actually correctly termed as mental health. Initially, a long time ago, we used to term it as culture, behaviors, traditions, and so on and so on and so forth. So it was being okayed back then when it was actually a mental health problem. And that's what I was saying. There are so many factors that are actually pushing us to the modern day crisis. Not only the family, but there are actually more factors in relation to that. Now, let me appreciate the even more statistics. When you look at the counties, data as per counties, we still have a problem with statistics even in Kenya. For example, I know you might realize this when you're Googling or trying to access statistics on suicide, mental health, and especially in Kenya, most of the sources we can rely on are publishing media, unfortunately or fortunately. When you look at the health records and MOH, KBHS, WHO, and others, they might not be so much up to date. So we miss a lot of data in regards to that. Data type, when you are looking at the suicide cases in Nyeri, much of the sources are actually from nation media and other media houses, but we have to appreciate that that's what we can use for now. When you look at global in Kenya context, the mental health crisis is huge in Central Kenya. Central Kenya has the biggest statistics, and especially Kiambu. Kiambu was leading. Nyeri, I remember, was number three. Kiambu was number one. I don't remember number two. That was Muranga in these cases. Now, the top conditions, and I know we will keep referring to them, are, for example, suicide. By the suicide by itself is a mental illness in isolation, despite being a sign and symptom of other mental illnesses. Another one we will keep talking about is now depression, which is a whole topic of discussion, and anxiety conditions. I actually love that you highlighted the statistics on that because they are so common and rampant nowadays. Because anxiety ranges all the way from a panic attack to OCD, the obsessive compulsive disorders, hysteria, and so many others. Bipolar is also tied together with depression because they are both mood disorders and they're so very common. I'll also highlight something about self-inflicted
Schizophrenia.
injury because yeah, there is also schizophrenia plus psychosis. Now that one is a whole other definition. Now we have a huge gap in regards to information and knowledge. You know, in the society. That is me, you, everyone else in the society. Because with this information and knowledge, that's the only way then we can be able to demystify the myths and the misconceptions that we have. We are in a society or in a community whereby hallucinations and delusions are termed as evil spirits. And you'll find someone who is a master's graduate, a PhD graduate, okay, in that it's the evil spirits. That is why that person is, in town or doing this and that behavior, you know. And to them, they believe this person, belongs to the church for redemption and not to the hospital for that matter, despite how much information you try to share with them at the moment. So unless there is continuous sensitization to them in the community. And that's why actually I was able to, or actually influenced what we do at Mayhill Training Institute, because we want to bridge that gap. We want to narrow that gap as much as we can with trainings on PFA, or what we call psychological first aid. This is whereby you do not have to be a healthcare worker for you to actually have information on how you can provide first aid to an individual with a mental health crisis. A crisis is whereby right now, maybe I'm known to have depression or I've been managing bipolar or whichever other illness, but right now I have an episode. Then what can you do? How can you be there for me? You know, often I get to ask the questions. If today I called you and asked you, I need a therapist, how would you get a therapist? Do you have a contact to one? Most people do not have an idea what happens in a therapy room, do not have an idea where I can get a therapist, do not have an idea where I can get a pro bono therapy session, for example, here in Kenya. Whereas there's so many sources that we can actually have. But it's the information that is lacking in the community, in the society at large. But I'll be talking about that as well. On the myths in regards to these mental illnesses, the common needs usually are, for example, number one, we talked about the evil spirits. That is a huge myth that we usually have a hard time. Even in my trainings, I have people, discussing that concept, whether it's actually caused by evil spirit, because they believe so. And this is the statement that I often use. If we believe that if you believe that your religious leader can actually is the one who is supposed to actually cure, allow me to use cure or heal that mental illness, which is depression. I believe when your child is having an asthmatic attack, then you should take them to your religious leader as well, because those two people are sick. And if you believe that your religious leader can heal depression, that does it mean that he cannot heal asthma? Why is it that for your asthma child you have to rush them to the hospital and not to your religious leader? We have to treat depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis as a disease, just like asthma and pneumonia. So if your relative, your friend who has pneumonia, you would take them to a pastor before a hospital, then that's okay, which we will not do, you know. And so we should stop treating the mental illnesses any different from that. That
I think
Mhm.
sorry, I think one of the things that we have to contend with is the poor degree of awareness when it comes to the appreciation of mental health. Because if, for example, back in the day when HIV and AIDS, the people are reporting on that, there was a lot of stigma to people that are suffering from the condition. And the same thing applies to mental conditions, be it depression, be it anxiety, be it schizophrenia. I mean, most of us, especially people that were born in the 70s and 80s, if you are feeling down, you are either being accused of being moody, you are either accused of you're stressing yourself up for no reason, but you never got the right audience to actually express yourself. As a matter of fact, you deal with your problems, and we do not want to, you know. It's the same thing even in a workplace. Someone can be dealing with a sick relative, or they are dealing with a personal issue, maybe their marriage or relationship, it doesn't matter. And someone starts performing poorly, oftentimes, no, most of the time, people do not think what else could be the contributing factor. So I think when it comes to the misconceptions, why people are going down on a psychological point of view, I think we really need to bring awareness to that. We need to steer people away from stigma. And also, you may be having the right people to support you. But for example, if I'm the one who has a mental health condition, acceptance, the various degrees of grief, you need to grieve and come to a level of acceptance. If I'm not accepting that I may have bipolar, if I'm not accepting that, I have schizophrenia, but if I take my condition, my medication, I'm all right. And I've identified the triggers that can lead to a manic episode. So I think it's all parties concerned need to come to come to the fore. But at the same time, even when it comes to the medical community, not many medical practitioners know how to communicate. There are situations you really don't need to see a psychiatrist. You maybe just need to see a psychologist and you're good. There are situations where you need to go beyond the psychologist, you need to have a psychiatrist and you have a good treatment plan. So, how do we go forth? Amos?
Thank you. That's also so true. Allow me just to push that point home that we need to break the stigma that we have revolving around mental health. And yes, we also have a personal responsibility in the same. We should not be comfortable with playing the victim. We still have a responsibility. I remember when I was in my high school years, there's a day I really felt overwhelmed by psychosocial issues. Anyway, every family has that, and so my mom was closer to us than my dad, so I decided to make a call and told her it was actually around this hour, 7 p.m. So I messaged my mom and told her we need to talk. I'm not okay. I feel overwhelmed and want to we need to talk. Now she asked me to meet her somewhere. She was coming home actually, so she asked me meet me at certain place. Then we walk home as we have this conversation. Well and good. So I went and we had a conversation. The conversation started around 7:45, 8 p.m. thereabout, ending at 11 p.m. But truth be told, I barely spoke for 5 minutes in those 2 to 3 hours. She dominated the conversation. Actually, the conversation stopped being about my problem. It was totally different. At the end of the day, we were not talking about my problem. We were talking about something else. And one of the statements that stuck with me is we cannot go and, because I told her I need to see a psychologist or a therapist. Well, I don't know how much information I had about her, but I remember her saying we cannot take our family issues out of our compound. We cannot go and share them with a stranger. It's not our family alone that had or has such perceptions about therapy and psychology and all that. Because there in life thereafter, I had to actually see a therapist in regards to that and so many matters. There's so many families that actually have that notion that we should not have this conversation with a stranger. We should not take it out of our family context, which is really now leaves this person without a space or someone to, a place to vent and let out what they are going through. So we still have a whole responsibility in regards to that. Um, Now, when we're talking about the personal responsibility, I usually say it's better to term it or look at it as if it was me myself, it's easier to look at it as a survivor point of view more than a victim. Now, when you say you're a victim of a mental illness, because some people will get comfortable at it, because at the victim level, you do not have a responsibility in anything. You're not a key player in it. But at a survivor point of view, you actually have an active responsibility even in the recovery. And that is the case with mental health as well, be it depression, bipolar, or something of the sort. Whether it was caused by a traumatic event or caused by family experiences in childhood or even in your teenage years or in your adult years, you still have a sole personal responsibility to heal and recover. That is solely your responsibility, not your parents, not your relatives, not your family, not even your country owes you that. It's a personal responsibility to recovery or for recovery. We must appreciate that, and that comes from with step one, which you said that you must accept that actually I am unwell and I need help. That is the first step, you know, that I'm actually unwell and I need help. Then the journey can begin from there. Because there are so many forms of therapy, and when you're talking or managing the situation, and it's actually true that actually some of these cases can be handled at a psychologist's point of view, not even necessarily a psychiatrist. Some of them can be handled by a counselor or a psychologist without necessarily going for a psychiatrist review. Now, allow me to say this, and I'm not sorry to say it. Not all religious leaders are counselors. Not all religious
True.
leaders are. But the fact that someone has the prefix pastor does not mean they know how to do counseling and all that just because they read the Bible. They read the same Bible you read, you know. It's not automatic, it does not automatically make them a counselor. And the reason I'm saying this is because we have seen so many um, young souls, both male and female, falling prey. The soonest being what happened in Nyeri, in Nyeri County. It's my home county, so I have so many flashbacks from them, whereby a small boy was sodomized by a pastor. You can imagine. Just a pastor is someone you would expect you can run to, and was sodomized by that person. So we have to get that right. Now, there are so many therapists that come from a professional point of view. You cannot just start, reading something online and all of a sudden you become a counselor, or reading the Bible and all of a sudden you become a counselor. Even most of these churches have actually their own professional counselors, not the pastors per se, but professional counselors. Most of these churches have that, and let us utilize that and take that into attention, because religion has a lot to play in the recovery period. I must accept that, and I must give it credit. But we have to do it with a lot of caution. We have not to overdo, because you cannot trust someone just because they use a prefix in their name. You said also about the role of the family unit in the recovery, social support, and that's why, just reminding me, there is someone who just called me and wanted me to confirm whether they can get a slot for admission, rehabilitation at Mathari. Now, family support means a lot when it comes to the journey of someone suffering from a mental illness. Let us not dump our relatives at rehabilitation centers, mental health units, psychiatric hospitals, and go back to the society and forget. You know, we just want them to get into the admission ward and we run away. We take a break. That's what we term it as. We are taking a break. So, tumemwachia daktari for the next 3 months. We can breathe, quote unquote. That should not be the case. Because at the end of that rehabilitation or that admission, be it 3 months, this person will come back to that society, to that family. So what will happen at that point? Because they will not stay in the hospital forever. They will not do so. So they need to come back to a society that is ready to receive them, that is warm, that is understanding of their condition. You know, because the condition will not come to an end just because they went to the hospital. They will be managing the condition even outside, and the social support has a lot to play. That is why you'll see when people coming from rehab centers, and the first day they come back to the society, the first day they get back to the drug. The first day, after 3 months, 90 days of admission, we had shown so much progress. That even you don't need even to go far. Google are the most recent cases we have had. Let's talk about our friend, the former citizen reporter. If you remember, his case has been in the media time and out again and again. He's in and out of rehab, being at that time because of relapses. And it happens that because the social support has a lot to play when it comes to the recovery journey of this individual. Still in the
So I think one of the things you're saying there is the lack of proper reintegration. It can be out of an illness, even someone who's been in prison.
true,
Reintegration.
true,
I think what one of the things, if we were to look at it like a medical case, let's use the big C, cancer. When you have a cancer patient, there is the counseling that is done to the patient, and there is also awareness that is also done to the family or the support system. And it's a journey that all parties concerned must walk together. Now, if you're lucky enough to have the right support system, they will journey with you, there will be understanding, there will be that clarity, and you will not feel like you're bearing that load by yourself. Now, when now we come to the mental side of things, first things first, until recently, it's when we started appreciating the need for good mental health, or actually what mental health is about. And unfortunately, not much effort has been done to make people aware about the different conditions, the different situations, and most importantly, people to understand that everyone is susceptible. I mean, the topic of today's discussion is modern day health, the modern day mental health crisis. And as it stands, everyone, you will go to the office, you will deal with pressures of work. Let us just look at the different touch points that can make you go crazy from the time you leave your house. So you wake up in the morning, you may have enough to provide for breakfast, or you don't, so you might be hungry. Maybe the money you have is you're trying to balance. Is this enough to take me to the office? What do I need to sacrifice? Then you go and pick up a matatu, as an example. The tout, or makanga as we like to call them here, will either be in a good mood, or he will be pissed off, and everyone in the matatu will just get a negative experience. By the time you get to the office, you have probably rubbed shoulders as you're walking through the streets. You've either been mugged or pickpocketed, or you've gotten to the office. Okay. The next thing you know, you get to the office, your boss, because they had their head bit off by their boss, now they come and bite your head off. Okay. It's not even 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it's only 7:30 going to 8. By 10 o'clock, you wish the day was over because your boss is pissed. It's the day the IT system decides to crash. IT people are overwhelmed, so they are also pissed off because everyone is giving them pressure. You don't have enough resources. You didn't have breakfast, so you're trying to balance what I'm going to eat for lunch. I might need to skip dinner. In essence, that's just you. You've not yet received a call from your sibling or your parent to tell you the way harvesting or planting needs to be done, and they need money that you do not have. So when you look at it, it's cumulative. It's like compounding interest. So ultimately, someone may think you're okay just because you have not been diagnosed with schizophrenia, or you've not been diagnosed with bipolar or depression, whatever degree of it is. We fail to understand that mental well-being, it might come through in the most minute of ways or in a very huge way. So the reintegration, I mean, as you've correctly said, yes, people will say we do not air we don't air our linen out in the public, because all of a sudden, if you were to express yourself, the whole village is going to know. Because at the same time, back in the day, data protection and privacy, probably even present day. Yeah. How many times can you be walking down the corridors of a hospital and medics are just discussing over maybe a patient they have, and you can put two and two together, you know? So I think we really need to broaden the understanding of mental well-being. It's not just to the person concerned or the patient, or the person, not even, doesn't necessarily need to be the patient, because some of these conditions you'll have to live with them for life. But it's not just the ones that have been affected directly, but also the ones that are affected indirectly. What is their degree of understanding of what is happening? And how can you ensure that, if someone is reintegrating back into the society, the right things are there, and the things that are going to be triggers are actually set aside. Amos?
Thank you. And let me pick from where you just left. We have a social responsibility. And that is actually why we are doing the PFA course now. When you look at the risk factors of mental illnesses, let me not call them the causes, let me just call them the risk factors to mental illnesses. You will realize genetics is a very weak link. Hereditary is a very weak link. The strongest link is environment. And when I'm talking about environment is, for example, your family, the persons or the people around you. For example, when you're raised by a family whereby the parents have a mental illness, could it be schizophrenia or bipolar, you have a high chance of picking up either the same or an anxiety disorder. You have a high chance. But the high chance is not because you are of your DNA makeup. No, it's because of the environment. Okay. Now, and it's the same thing, even in our society ourselves, in this society whereby social media is open, we do not have much control in regards to how much we speak or what we say and what we speak. We really influence or affect someone's mental illnesses. Your Rosalind, you're very active on LinkedIn. You might have seen very many people say what was their first experience when they came to LinkedIn. Some of them had to leave for some time for their own psychological wellness, because of the interpretation of the information that they found there. Maybe it is too much pressure into them in regards to how they view it. When you look at, for example, the other social media pages like TikTok, let me talk about TikTok in short while. It has a positive impact on mental health and a negative as well. Because I usually say if you come on social media, be ready for anything. Kenyans will really roast you for whatever you say and how you say it. You trend for the wrong reasons. No. As much, there are people who are actually using TikTok and especially the live part and the reels as a form of therapy. Not once or twice have I come across a video of someone venting how they are feeling or the journey of their mental wellness or mental well-being as a journey. They are saying it, yes, maybe it might inspire someone, but you can feel they are saying it at the moment. It's not something they went through long time ago. They are going through that session currently, and they're sharing it as a way of venting, as letting out, as speaking out. And it's a form of talk therapy. They're using it so nicely. One of the persons I can actually highlight is a lady by the name of Viona. I think she's Viona Wamoyo or Violet Wamoyo, one of them from Nakuru, who is a caregiver actually to a brother with a mental illness as well. And she brings it so boldly and calmly in social. Even when she's having a mental breakdown, she will say or speak out on what she's going through. It has been a journey since I think 2022, which she has been telling us everything that is going through. And you can see the progress even in her life because she's not now harboring it herself. She's able to then she has a way of letting it out. So she's not containing it individually, everything that is going on through the life. And what I want to focus here is that there are different forms of therapy. As much as we usually say for men, for example, speak up, for men, speak out, get someone you can speak to. Allow me for a minute nitetee wanaume. It's a bit different. It's a bit difficult for men to actually buy the idea. It's not by just saying that statement that the men will start now opening up to other persons and all that. I often get to ask the question, why do you think that men do not want to speak up? And number one is because, number one, us as a society or the relatives or the persons around this man cannot even be trusted with this information. You know, there's so many other reasons. But now, let us also build on the point whereby there are other forms of therapy besides actually talking to an individual. They might not necessarily need to talk to a therapist. Even talking it out to someone else means a lot. But there are even other forms of therapy rather than talk therapy to another individual. I have a friend of mine who has a form of calling strangers. So she will dial a number that is so strange to her, and whoever speaks on the other side, she will vent, talk and 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 talk until it is lighter to her. And then she will block the number, delete, and forget that conversation ever happened. You see, to her, that's a form of therapy, and it actually works nicely. Crazy as it sounds, huh? Look at, for example, writing. Writing is another form of therapy. I think I have used that for the longest I can remember. And for example, when you look at some of the stories on the social media that I lay out, most people will buy them to be true, to be about me, to be either not about me. Even those who have known me from the years 2016, you might know over time we were running a newsletter monthly, whereby that newsletter would have like eight stories or to 12 stories, every release every month. And in most of the cases, I would say the author or the owner of the story is anonymous, or even give them names, whereas it was my own story. It was a form of talk therapy to vent, to let it out. So I don't have to come here and get a friend or someone to speak up because maybe I'm not able to be vulnerable to that level. But yes, I can still use other forms of therapy. Talk therapy is one. Writing is another form of therapy. Other persons are actually using gym and physical activities, another form of therapy. You know, they can do that, and it is working so nicely. For females, it's easier to talk. Talking in females is way easier, unlike males. So for the males, the good thing for the well-being is that we get a way to let out, to vent, to release that much pain we might have, that much challenge we might have, that much anger we might have within ourselves. And if we do not release it, then we will release it to the wrong persons. We'll release it to our children who are undeserving. We'll release it to our partners who are undeserving of the pain and the anger. So it's good that we release early enough. I usually say this: your brain can hold only too much. To a certain extent, it will burst. And when it bursts, it will release that which you have withholding at the wrong time, in the wrong place, to the wrong person. And you'll not have control over that.
So,
And that's why you hear people
mhm.
saying, he or she just snapped and did whatever he or she did.
So what I'm hearing you say is suppressing. When you suppress emotions, when you
Yes.
suppress feelings, when you do not, work through a situation, however uncomfortable. I remember there was a psychiatrist who actually told me once, Roslyn, you have to learn to sit in it. It doesn't matter how painful it is, you have to learn to sit in it. Because sometimes we've conditioned ourselves in such a way that you want to get over and done with it. The sooner it's okay, it doesn't matter. But the truth of the matter is, behind that it's okay, it doesn't matter, you are crashing inside, you are dying inside. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have the audience, you don't have the mechanisms, you do not know how to deal with that emotion, that feeling. So what do? You suppress it. And sometimes we also use escapism. Escapism in the sense, you feel angry, instead of sitting in it, you go to the gym and go lift weights. Fine, you've lifted the weights, fine, you've worked out, but you've really not worked out. Because no one can actually lie to the brain. It's like the Johari's window.
Yep.
Whatever is suppressed will always come. And when it comes up with all its the children, the grandchildren, go back all the way to the ancestors, because you've suppressed it. Something that maybe happened to you when you were really young. It comes up to you, like you said, they blew a fuse. Maybe you are 35 years old doing life, and then someone does something that triggers you so badly that everything that you've experienced since you were, you could actually express who you are, it comes up and you're like, hold up. Like we like to say in Swahili, sasa hii imetoka wapi? You know, because all of a sudden the topic of discussion or the topic of whatever issue is at hand, it's no longer relevant. Now you're having to deal with things from God knows when. Yeah. So suppression will not do. Escapism is not going to help. We really need to sit in it, deal with it. Writing is good, you know. Sometimes you can write. Crying is also very good. I know of people that maybe they have experienced loss, and during that loss, maybe they lost a loved one. They never cried. They went on, autopilot mode. Think XYZ needs to be done. And I know of situations that 2 years down the line, that person will then sit down and actually break down and mourn the loss from 2 years ago. So sometimes when you're looking at, again, topic of the day, the modern day crisis. I'm trying to think of our brothers and sisters that were affected, say, by USAID. Your life had worked out, everything was working out okay. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter what the send off package is. You don't have a job, you don't have constant income. You have family, you have bills to pay, you had a life, you had an image. All of a sudden, the market is full of talent and it's very hard to get a job. So that's one of the crises that you have to deal with. Modern day crisis, we have a gazillion and one medical conditions. What's your level of understanding of the said condition and the people around you, you know? Or you could be jobless. Maybe you were let go. Maybe the job you were working, the place was toxic. You needed to walk away for your mental health. And then there is this thing that, family and friends do. Are you still applying? Do you have any feedback? And to the person that is receiving that, they're wondering, do you really think I sat down and decided I'm not going to look for a job? It's exhausting. It's very exhausting. So, all these various factors, this is what you're dealing with today, or lack of boundaries. You've never had the word no. You don't know no is a statement, is a, you just don't know no. You have been there for others at the detriment of your well-being. And when now you decide to do good by you, all of a sudden everyone says you've changed. Oh, you can no longer talk to Rosalind. Oh, she's changed. We are no longer in her class. Oh, you can no longer talk to Amos. He doesn't help people anymore. That is what we are dealing with at this present day and time. And even the way of parenting. Back in the day, it was pretty much dictatorship. What your parents says goes. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. There are positives to it. But the modern day kid, these post-COVID children that, the moment they know how to say mama and papa, they know more about your phone than you even know. The way you bring them up is totally different. So how can we build, how can we build strong foundations for ourselves that, we can take care of ourselves and to actually realize that no one owes us any favors. That in as much as you have family, in as much as you have friends, well, their life is not your life. They also have a life. So how do you take care of yourself without losing yourself?
Good. Actually, I think what you are now basing on is what you call self-care. It's actually one of the things that we even cover in the psychological first aid, because we usually say an injured first aider is no longer a first aider. So even in mental health first aid, if you are a client, if you get a mental crisis, then you're no longer a first aider, you're a client from that point on until you sorry. So self-care is a very huge aspect of it, because what you want is, are we able to protect ourselves, prevent the crisis from happening? Are we able to put ourselves at a healthy, line, straight line, such that we do not fall to a level whereby it's too late. Can we do something about that? And that's true. But even before I get build on that, allow me to just go back slightly to what you talked about, escapism and avoidance of behaviors in regards to mental illnesses and crisis. Number one, I usually appreciate so much crying, and especially when you go for burials and such sad events, and I see someone crying, I like it so much. For me, I like that because this person is able to process the feelings and let them out and feel them, sit on them. You know, we sometimes do not want to do that. We want to avoid that. And actually, even for some people who get to me, one of the questions is, how can I avoid this? How can I stop this from happening? Fun fact, you will not be able to stop it. You have to go through it. That's the resilience during self-care that we needed to build, such that when this moment comes, this moment of no, this moment of layoff, this moment of you're all alone by yourself, you can be able to go through that phase, appreciating what resources you have gathered, what self-confidence, self-concept, self-esteem that you have gathered or built on for the past moments of your life. That is all about self-care. Now, there are other negative methods of therapy or even avoidance and all that. For example, gambling. Gambling is a current crisis, a modern day crisis as well we are dealing with, and some people are using it as a form of therapy. You know, they're trying to run away from their financial maybe distress or something of the sort, and so they resort to gambling, get into an addiction and all that. Then alcohol and drug abuse. There are also some people usually say alcohol and drug abuse versus mental health. They run both sides. A mental illness can lead to drug and substance abuse, and as well, drug and substance abuse can lead to mental illness. It can go either way. So some people with a mental illness they run to alcohol and all that because you do not want to go through the crisis. You do not want to handle or experience whatever you're going through. However, at 3 a.m. you'll wake up and your problem is still waiting for you. There's so many other negative methods of crisis, but there's no escaping about it. Even if you might escape it for a season, but you'll have to sit down, own it, accept that it is here, and go through it. There's only one route through it. Even from the religious context of view, they usually say the same thing. Like you have to go through the crisis to the end. You have what you can gather is now the strength and the resilience to go through the crisis. Now, so self-care will come at a point whereby right now when we are healthy is when we need to build on ourselves. Self-care, take care of yourself, be able to gather resources whereby you can later use them. For example, gathering a lot of information and knowledge about mental illnesses, sources of help, and how you can take care of yourself mentally such that you do not crash when a crisis comes along. Because life is not smooth. Life is full of crises. Nobody ever promises a soft life. A soft life is just on books and papers or articles. But in real life, life has to hit you and it will hit you hard. So when that moment comes, what will you do? Even the Swahili people said, aliye juu mngoje chini. So it will come that point that life will hit you hard. What will you do at that point or juncture? So you must be ready for that. And so you must be able to build your resilience when that time comes. As you have said, for example, normalizing and being okay with hearing and accepting the no, be it in friendships and social interactions, be it at work, be it in any other context. The fact that you can take a no. So someone tells you no, this will not work, and you're okay with that. You understand and you accept that that is it. Because it means a lot to process all that. I don't know whether you have anything to add in regards to that.
No, actually, it's a very critical thing in terms of saying no, or how we build our self confidence, how we build our our coping mechanisms. Because on one hand, you can handhold your child from when they're really young to when they're adults. They actually do not have any survival skills. Zero. Yeah.
Yep.
Then there is where you actually do expose them and let them be hurt. It's like when you're teaching a child to ride a bicycle. It will hurt for you to see them, down and raised, but how else will they learn that it's part and parcel of life? And it's the same thing when it comes to, an individual. The the need to understand that when you fail to process an emotion, when you fail to process a feeling, it's only a matter of time when it is going to come back with a greater force, because it's taking into account a lot of things, you know and the need, like you mentioned, gambling, because you're trying to escape from the reality. Then we really need to have a degree of acceptance that, okay, I am currently without a job. All right, when you decide to go gamble, you're actually losing the money. It doesn't matter if you have a good hand or not, but what does that tell you? It's telling you that you're actually not giving yourself the opportunity to actually process and identify what more you can actually do, because we are very quick to create this image and this facade, and we really don't want people to see us away from what we really are. How many people are dying in debt, drowning in debt because you have created this image, this facade? Social media, it doesn't mean that all those influencers are living the life that they project. Some are working, some are being paid for it. But how many people can actually decipher true from fake? Yeah, because if you're going to live your life based on what you see on social media, if you're going to live your life based on how your colleague is dressing, what they are doing, as we like to say in Swahili, unajiongeza stress bure, because at the end of the day, you really don't know what the other person is doing to be what they are. They could also be living their own facade, or they are actually genuinely living their life. So why don't you just live your life for what it is? Namos.
Very true. Allow me to build on this. I almost forgot that. It's funny how we have some people who are actually afraid of going through the self healing journey. In this context, you realize that you're suffering from traumatic um, event that happened while you're young, and so it is affecting your emotional wellness and psychological wellness, and so could be giving you anxiety, could be giving you mood instability and all that. And so you realize whatever is the problem, and so you have to work around it. However, some people might have gotten comfortable in that victim card, you know, to the extent whereby you do not want to work on self healing or self recovery journey. Why? It's a very painful, tiring, and difficult journey. It's a journey that you go through it. By the way, the first step is accepting that actually I have a problem that I have to work on, and it is my responsibility, not my parents, not my relatives. Yes, I might have gone through the crisis under them, but the recovery is my journey. That is step one. A step that we do not want to take because it is difficult, and yet we have developed a comfort at where we are at the moment. I have a friend of mine. She's Naomi, and I know she will be okay if I mention her name. But she's one I have watched go through self healing journey, a journey that you can appreciate. You can see the growth and the progress 2 years or 3 years down the line. A painful journey, but at the end of the day, it comes from a point of picking the parts of yourself that you are uncomfortable with owning, actually owning them, that you have to go through every part of yourself, resolve, discuss about it, own it, accept it, and be like, it is okay, it happened, and but that does not define who I am, does not define who I can be. I have to pick this path and build a life for myself. There are people who are okay with being comfortable in that victim card, and especially now that you have mentioned it, in the celebrity lifestyle, because you do not want to paint the picture of need, the picture of poverty, the picture of a humble beginning, and all that, unless when you're telling a sweet story after you become rich. So we do not want to own who we are or where we are coming from until when we cannot do it anymore. I'm trying to think for myself, and I'm not mentioning names. Where do I, how do I sit month after month, day after day, and accumulate a loan of 1 million, not a business loan, not my medical bill, but on my own expenses, 1 million Kenyan shillings. I'm sitting back and I'm like, there's a lot that needs to be done. There's something that is not working right. If I'm comfortable accumulating bills of worth of 1 million personal bills, there is something wrong with that life. There's something wrong with the decisions that you're making in life. Because by the time you're getting to even the 250 mark, and this was not a business investment that you ever made, then you should have been able to call yourself and you recollect yourself and being able to join dots, one plus one, then let us narrow this progression such that even if the loans will continue, they will not go through at that trajectory anymore. They will slow down, you know. And so it comes back to the point about we want to paint a life. And peer pressure is actually meaning a lot. Look at, for example, when Jaguar was uh, on radio, and he was saying that most celebrities actually are in-house during the day and they show up during the evening, saying that during the day wataonekana sana na watu. Whereas nobody even cares, you know. We are walking by ourselves in the streets and you do not care whether that is a celebrity you saw or not, and you should live your life. But we want to paint a picture. We want to paint an Instagram image that people will see, and now we are making it in life. Behind the scenes, it's a whole different story.
I think one of the things, I think a lot of times people accumulate things to fill a void. And the void can be as a result of very many things. Yeah. The the aspect or the need for self-awareness, that journey of understanding yourself, it is very painful and it's also very scary because you have to bear yourself out and actually it's like you do a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What can you do better? And what are those behaviors and mannerisms you have that can actually sidestep you at any given moment in time? And when it comes to now the mental well being, the mind is a powerful thing because when you resolve to do something and you keep at it, if you have that discipline, you can actually turn things around. The
Yeah,
question is how many people are willing enough sometimes to walk that journey alone? Because it is most often, most times when you are in a really bad situation, that is when you actually get to see who your friends are. That's when you get to see who are your people. And the most annoying part is the people you thought are going to stand by you, you will not see them.
yeah,
But the people that you least expected, those are your people. The ones who walk through the shadows, they don't say much. You actually, the ones that you have low maintenance friendships,
yeah,
where when you pick up the call, it feels like you spoke yesterday and maybe the last time you spoke was a couple of months ago. So, who are your true people? Who are your key support systems? But at the same time, is someone willing to pull the plug? Because you can also have a friend, your ride or die, but your ride or die it will be the reason why you die.
yeah,
They're just chipping into you. They're just chipping into you and not building you. So, how much are you willing, or how many people are you willing to let go so that you can actually be you? There's also nowadays that the aspect of going no contact. You either have a sibling or your parent. You can never have a sober conversation. It will always end up with people throwing words at each other.
yeah,
And when you're done with that conversation, you actually feel drained. Or even if you don't feel not throwing words at each other, you actually, when the conversation is over, you're like, why did I even pick that call in the first place? Why did I even show up? Why do I even make the effort? So you decide to go no contact. And when you decide to go no contact, all of a sudden your life is nice. It's good. You have peace of mind. You don't have to deal with drama. You're just doing you. But for you to get to that level, you also have to accept that you also have to let people go. So
yeah,
are we
yeah,
strong enough? Because we may have this discussion about bipolar, depression, anxiety. But how much are we willing to let go of so that you can actually have your peace? Because yeah, as we see it, unless you make that concerted effort, you'll always be going round in circles. Almost.
Good. Very true. And allow me to add on this. I don't know where I'm. Okay, yes, this is what I wanted to say. When this person is walking the journey, for example, if it's me who is walking the healing journey, as my friend, or for, if you are the friend in this context, imagine the much that you are expected of is don't give up on them, walk the journey with them. Actually, in most cases, and even in PFA, I tell them, even if you do not have a voice, you can actually be there for this person because you don't even need much to talk to this person. Much of the thing is listen without judging and understand this person. Like, do not give up on this person. The person is not looking for advice from you. In most cases, they want someone who can listen without judging, who can accept them for who they are. Even that when they address their weaknesses and their struggles and their wounds, that this person will still look at them the same way. And that is what we actually as well and focus in the training. That let us build that or have that heart whereby you can listen. That person calls, let us not be quick to interject. Let us not be quick to tell them, by the way, actually hata mimi nilipitia hivyo. You see me last month, I also went through. So the conversation changes, and now it's not about being there for that person. We like making it our conversation and not about them. In being there for this person, the strongest tools that we usually say are actually two. Number one is a listening ear without judging, being able to listen. And number two is touch. That aspect of being affectionate to this person. Even a hug means a lot. Holding the hand means a lot. Comforting that person in that moment means really much. So it's not that you have to come with a whole dictionary with an whole, anatomy and physiology of being a good PFA provider or a best friend. It doesn't come with all those resources. We actually contain or have the resources because what we say, how we say, when we say it actually means a lot. And we have so insightful tools. If only we were able to actually use them as so. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. There's actually a question that has come through. This says, what is your take on another modern day happening? People who actually spend so much time on digital media that they do not know how to express themselves with their close ones or people in their communities, or the other side of the coin when every small thing is dramatized and posted online.
Um, I think let me go first. Actually, you highlighted on that. How are we able to filter and know that whatever is online is actually factual and not fictional? How are you able to identify that actually what we are processing or what we are consuming from the online media is actually truthful? Be in the political field, be it in the social context of life in any format, we must be able to do that. And the only way is for us to have a balance between all those two. Digital era is here and it's here to stay. AI is coming, it's here to stay. It's not going back. We're not going back to the analog physics. The only thing now we can deal with right now is the ability to balance and have control. All borrows back to self-control, self-awareness. How much are you able to control whatever you're consuming, even through the online media? It cannot be termed with the number of hours. I don't want to calculate that with the number of hours because if you're an influencer, you might be online more than I am, and so on and so forth. But how much control do you have over what you are consuming from these social media? I have some conversations, including with my relatives sometimes, and they will say something, and I'm like, wait a minute, you want to tell me you do not realize that was actually a falsified information, a fictional story. It was just a rumor that was posted online, but this person took it so intensely, they even emotional about it, and now you have to break their heart that actually it's just a rumor and not anything factual. We must be able to do that, and it comes with a balance that you have to as well consume from the real life as much as you're consuming from the online for you to actually be able to tell the difference. I don't know what you have to say about it.
I think to complement what you have said is that we need to realize that after these cameras are switched off, after this live stream goes off, there's life There's life that is happening that not everyone is seeing. And the more energy we put to create a facade for others to see, yet it's not the reality, it's the more energy you will have to put to actually process the damage you will have caused. And it's not causing damage to others, it's causing damage to yourself because you are lying to yourself. So when someone is, like this comment, people who actually spend so much time on digital media that they do not know how to express themselves. These ones I was told, when you're growing up, when you're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, and you have this idea. And then as you grow, you know, maybe you wanted to be a doctor at a certain age. I'll tell you, like for myself, I wanted to be a doctor I think by the time I was 24, I wanted to be, I wanted to have my own house, I wanted to drive my own car and all these things. Yeah. Then life will happen. Life is going to life. Yeah. And you will either have achieved that or none of it. So what happens? You are trying to play catch up over promises or intentions you had before, not realizing that you are not conforming to the modern day and time and the demands of the modern day and time. So a psychiatrist actually told me, Rosalind, you need to do a letter to yourself, to your younger self, because there are those things you achieved and there are those things you never achieved. So why are you beating yourself up? Why? You could be 35, but you are still living the dream of a 22-year-old. So you need to break that, because if you're still living with the mindset of the past, you are not actually giving yourself the opportunity, your current present self, you're not giving it the opportunity to thrive. So where you find yourself that you cannot express yourself other than being on digital media, on social media, you have a problem. And you really need to take a break from social media and recollect yourself and find out, who are you, you know? If I may kindly read another feedback that has come through from Benson, who's saying, I'm a living example of this amazing talk. Once lost everything, battled depression, cried a lot, sleepless nights, suicidal thoughts, questioned my existence. Friends fled as if they've just met a plague. Nothing worked. I'm grateful my mother never left my side. Happy everything is falling back. So grateful to God. Benson, you have actually given yourself the opportunity to bear yourself plain. And I would not be surprised that the quality of people in your life right now are of more value than the ones that left. I've come to the appreciation that sometimes bad things need to happen to get rid of some people, because maybe if that never happened, they will still be crawling around. Yeah. So the fact that you, the crying, the writing, the praying, you actually even wonder what is their purpose. You wonder, so I'm going to sleep to wake up tomorrow to do what? I am
Yeah.
jobless, I don't have anything. Yeah. So, Benson, thank you so much for sharing that. It is very encouraging. These things can happen, and you rise. Amos, what do you have to say?
Thank you. Actually, as well, I appreciate so much Benson for sharing that. And much of it, what I actually pick on it is the recovery journey, the healing journey, which is a continuous journey. And as we have said, it's a very difficult and painful journey that comes from a point of working on himself or herself a lot. I have this friend of mine way back. I think we got to interact first in the year 2015, 2016 there, but we often don't talk. I think this year we have talked with her twice. She lives with bipolar and depression. She had previously cases of suicidal attempts, several cases. People have severally broken her toilet window to save her from suicide. several occasions. Right now, she's in a better state than before. She is actually able to handle the condition without medication, which is a very, very a huge plus for her at that point. But now, listening to the journey of recovery, it comes to a point whereby she had to actually accept whatever happened, pick up the pieces, and actually walk. A painful decision, but it is actually the step one to recovery, to stability, to even being able to stand again, as well being able to highlight or identify the triggers and address them accordingly. You can be able to identify whether why you live means a lot. Your social network. She lost a lot of friends. She had to quit. She quit her university where she was schooling and never ever went there. She went to university, a different university, which she finished recently, graduating in December. It's a whole painful journey of working on yourself, picking up the pieces, and it comes from a point of accepting that yes, this has happened, I need to work on it. The sooner you accept that and work on it, the better. Yeah.
I think one of the things we also need to highlight is trauma and where, I mean, the sources of trauma. And when it comes to the different various sources of trauma, I think one of the things we need to appreciate is the trauma that you experience and the one who caused you that trauma. They may be, it can be as a result of them not dealing with whatever situations they experienced previously. So what do? They project it, and you become the victim. Now, there is need to break that cycle. When you come to the realization that what I am going through, maybe let's say your childhood was very hard, your parents were very strict, or maybe you experienced stepmother, different situations. From that experience, you can actually break that cycle and make the journey ahead to be better, to be a better parent. I come from the 80s era where what your mother or father says goes. You don't talk back. Talking back is enough for your parent to beat the life out of you and reset you back to manufacturer settings with no updates. That was just that. And communication from our parents back in the day, people that were raised in the 50s and 60s, they were commanded. They did not have communication from their parents. They were commanded. And that is what they thought was what parenting was like. So when they became parents, they do the same. But with time, you come to realize, by the way, you can actually have a conversation. I'm not saying that you can tolerate nonsense. No. There is nonsense that needs, reset button. But there are things that you can actually break those, you can break that cycle.
Sure.
It can be from trauma and the fact that you need to process it, you know, break it down.
Yeah.
And you're not breaking it down because you're trying to find a justification to it. You're doing
Mm.
it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it for yourself, the cycle continues. Amos?
Sure. Actually, let me even make it easier because I know someone might be asking, how do I know that I'm carrying trauma? We are fond of using this statement in our conversations. Rose, me, I'm like that because we are like that in our family. All of us in our family, we are like that. That's a huge, huge identifier. That it's actually something that you're carrying. You have normalized it because we were brought up like that. I'm a single. I'm brought up by a single mother. I didn't have a dad. That's why. you know you're normalizing that because of how you were brought up in the 20, 30 years ago. That's so far away, and that is one identifier that actually there's something that you're carrying and could be influencing your decisions. Trauma, to be specific. Another trauma is, and it's very sensitive talking about it, is the sexual assault, defilement, rape, and all that. And actually, let me use a statistic here. When you get to see the statistics of most men who are charged with rape, defilement, and sodomy. Most of them, a significant number of them were sodomized when they were young. It's factual, it is the statistics, a significant number. So it's actually true that trauma means a lot. It has a lot of say in our life if we let it be, if we give it that much power. Whereby someone has been brought up by parents who are, fighting every single day and all that. And so they end up not ever getting married in the context that that is what marriage to them means. We normalized that, they went through that, and so they have allowed that trauma to have power, or you have, yes, allowed that trauma to have power over your life. So it's making the decisions for you. You are actually not the one making the decisions. These persons, you'll also find whereby someone will say, I will never get married. Myself, 23-year-old, 21-year-old, I never get married. You don't even much argue with them because you can actually see what is speaking behind their voice. Just get to ask what is happening, what's the problem. It borrows back with the understanding of what is a marriage like, what is a marriage unit look like, what they grow up knowing it. And until they actually admit that actually that was a wrong image, that is not the image of a marriage, then I can view it differently and then make a decision free from the trauma itself. That the trauma should not have influence over your life. It's a big step for you to actually identify and accept that actually this is not my decision. This is trauma that is influencing me. Yeah.
I think if I can add on to what you've said, there are people that were parentified when they were young. Maybe you had very many siblings, and a lot of firstborns suffer from this. You're the firstborn and you're expected to be commander in chief. If your sibling is crying, you better know why they're crying. It doesn't matter if you are not there, but you will pay the price as to why they are crying. Yeah. You took care of your siblings, you cooked for them. Pretty much, you are like an extension of a parent. And people that were parentified, more often than not, they actually do not want to have children because they were denied the opportunity to actually be children and to live. So they're like, children, it's not for me. The others that you come from, maybe your parents or partners of your parents who are very violent and they don't want to get married. They don't want to be in relationships. They don't know commitment. Or the reverse happens. Your parent, maybe your mom was battered and she stayed.
Mm-hmm.
So to them, they do not know that love can be love without violence.
Sure.
And those then when now they get into a relationship, they really do not know that you can actually get a gentleman who is not going to beat you, who is not going to scream at you, who actually does not like fussing around, and they just want to have a conversation. You, on the other hand, your manufacturer settings are violence and fighting. So the modern day mental crisis, it's it's so diverse that we
Yeah.
really need to take the time, as we say, kujita kamkutano. Sit,
Yes.
sit by yourself in your thoughts. Find out what are my red flags, what are my green flags, what do I need to stop, what do I need to improve on, because all of that will have a huge impact on matters to do with confidence, how you express yourself, how you get, for example, if I come from a background where you cannot have a sober conversation, I have to raise my voice. It's also going to impact the way I deal as a HR professional. It's going to impact the way that I communicate with others. Because what I say goes, it's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship, you know. So we really need to take to account all those various touch points in our lives and how they have impacted us in one way or another. And how do we turn that around? Is it going to be easy? No, but it's definitely going to be worth it. Amos?
Thank you. I'm actually trying to think. There are two books that were a bit insightful to me. Number one, I read the 48 Laws of Power together with another book named The Leader Without a Title. If I'm not wrong, yes. Immediately after finishing those books, I was feeling so wow, so very able, very capable and all that. And then the next time I'm gifted a book by the name You're Not Enough and That's Okay. You get to sit back and ask yourself, what are you doing to me? There's no way you have given me this so much. I've seen so much self awareness, self confidence. I believed I can be able to do all this, and then all of a sudden there's a book on top of my table saying I'm not enough and that's okay. I do not even that seen that part of that's okay. So I was like, what do you mean I'm not enough? Going to read through the book and all that. It takes a lot of as well humility to understand that we are not gods. You know, we are not gods ourselves by ourselves alone. We are social beings, and that's why we are human actually. And actually, even you look at the definition of mental health by the WHO, it says that you must be able to form meaningful social relations with others. That you are a social being. In your definition of mental health, is that you must be able to show that you can be able to form healthy social relations with others. The same way, you cannot rely on the self per se. You can emulsify it, you can make it so bold, but at an individual level, you need a hand, you need a shoulder right there, you need to run to this, you need to join hands so that you can be able to walk through this. Because at the end of the day, we are not, even animals themselves, they are social, but even a human being is more social. I just say, even for the introverts, no matter how introverted this person is, they always have that one person that you relate with, that they break to, that they connect with. There's always that one person in most cases that they connect with. Because naturally we are all social beings and we have to accept that fact. Now that borrows brings us to the point of being vulnerable, because for you to actually want to recover, heal, and walk the journey, then you must be able to accept that I am not that bold. I am not a goddess. I am not that lion. I am human. It is okay to fail. It is okay to make a mistake. It is okay to go through that hard situation. What matters is actually how you come out of it. That is the storyline that we should focus on. But we are not solely, um, a soft life kind of a person in life. But we also have our lows, and that is part of every life of every individual. We might not all bring it out here, but it is right there. I usually give this example. Just walk in town and stand somewhere, a busy town, even not even Akals, it's too busy. Try the roads like State House Road or something of the sort, and try to read the minds of those people driving across or even walking across, and try to think how their life could be. There is no life that will fit you better than your life, because people out here are going through so many challenges. If only they were given a microphone to speak, you would actually give them a hug. Whenever you yourself, you're actually feeling as if you're going through the worst of this world. So we are all going through this. Nobody has a soft life. So if we are able to join hands, two or three people, then the journey becomes lighter. The baggage, the burden becomes lighter. You're able to walk. Yeah.
As we come to the tail end of this conversation, because this is a very wide conversation and we can speak about a lot of things. What are the tips? Because you handle, mental first aid. What can you advise us as tips on how, on mental first aid, not only for others, but also how we can apply those fundamentals to ourselves? Because if, let's say, if you're going through a crisis, you also need to know how to manage your own personal crisis. So as a few tidbits on how to manage your mental well-being better.
Good. I'll talk about two things. Number one, look, listen, and link. As a mental health first aider, as a psychological first aider, they're the same thing. You must be able to do those three things: look, listen, and link. Looking is whereby I should be aware of my environment, and my environment is my social environment. I should be able to pick something from Rosalind or the other friend. But nowadays, Rosalind, that's not the Rosalind I know. Whatever Rosalind has posted today doesn't look so nice. Rosalind has not posted for the last 5 days. It's unlike her. You must be able to look for those red flags and be able to identify them. Number two, listen, because as much as I have picked that something is not usual with Rosalind, it does not necessarily mean that she's not okay. You could be taking a health break from social media. You could be in Mombasa swimming, in Diani. So again, I need to listen. And the only way you can get to listen is ask, not based on assumptions, not what I heard, not what I read. But let me make a contact to Rosalind and listen to her. You're listening for the response, but as well, you're also listening for the nonverbal cues, the behavior change, the character change, and all that. That will also inform you. And then number three, the ability to link. You might not be able to provide a lot of help to this person, but you should be able to link this person to a source of help. For example, a therapist, a counselor, and all that. I just say the same way you can call 911 or an ambulance operator somewhere in case of medical emergency. At least have that 1199, in your mind or on your phone. There is someone said, I need to speak to someone. Out of your mind, you can tell them, call 1199, and that's the end of it. You have been able to link this person. However, don't link and drop. You must be able to link and make a follow up. Because, for example, 1199 is the counseling toll free line by Red Cross. Funny thing, they don't even ask your name. I found it very awesome. They don't ask your name, they don't want to know who you are. You just go dive and they get to listen to you. They have follow up whereby they can be able to link with you with a psychologist or a counselor around where you reside if you're willing, or if you're willing to continue with the online sessions, then that's well and good. Those are the three things. Number two, I wanted to focus on the self care now part of it. That we must prepare or build on the self part of it, such that when a crisis comes, when a problem comes, we know how to navigate, or we'll be able to navigate it in a better way. Let me give an example with this. You know of this comedian called Akukudenja. You might have heard of him. Akukudenja, I will say this because it's in public domain. He shared about it. He suffers from a condition we call sickle cell disease. And there's a time last year, but when he posted something and said he was actually being interviewed, and he said he's okay with death. The life expectancy of such a person is early 20s, but he is past that. And so he has normalized or has accepted that death can hit him anytime. He has no regrets. He's not sad about that part and all that. When someone comes and comments right there, hey guys, our brother here needs help. He's suicidal. So those are two views of this conversation at that point. Because from where you look at it, the conversation is that this guy has actually become so much self-aware of what he's going through and the crisis he is in and what he's living with. He has identified it, and he's not speaking out of the illness. He's speaking from a point of understanding and self-acceptance. So self-care, it's a journey. It's not an incident. It's a journey that you have been working on yourself to a point whereby when something difficult happens in your life, you know how to take that drop, that fall, that you will be able to walk up again. And I'll quote a friend of mine who told me, normalize disappointing people.
Thank you so much, Amos. I think the three L's, look, listen, and link. I think we could all use, you know, that in our everyday lives, not just assuming, you know. Let us go beyond that. And we also need to normalize having, mental discussions. We need to normalize having safe spaces where you can speak out and, like, I know there was a trend where people are saying we listen, we don't judge. But we need to actualize that, listen and don't judge. And We also need to appreciate that whatever someone is going through, you may not have encountered someone else who has gone through that, but whatever your situation is not unique to you. There's someone else somewhere in this world, and there will be many who will be going through that. It's just same script, different cast. We need to normalize having these conversations. We need to normalize booking appointments with psychologists and psychiatrists. Those professionals are not limited to people that are having a crisis. You don't need to have a crisis to go see a psychiatrist or to go see a psychologist. We need to normalize understanding that, people can decide to better their life and people actually do go away. Because I think, when people go no contact, people can go away, people can actually withdraw. And if they're not withdrawing out of, a crisis, maybe they have decided this is the path that I want to take, then in some cases you also need to respect that and let it be. So this conversation, I think, if we were to break it down, we would need to break it down from what we have had, which is pretty much, I think we've not even touched the absolute layer of mental well-being. We need to we can also break it down when it comes to medical conditions, depression. Bipolar is depression. And a lot of people, for example, in Kenya, bipolar is actually a disability. We need to normalize, bringing awareness about these conditions and and creating safe mental health spaces for everyone to thrive. Amos, I cannot thank you enough for sparing the time and joining us in this conversation. Before we call it a day, do you have any parting shot for our viewers either on YouTube or on LinkedIn?
Um, Number one, thank you so much. I appreciate your Rosaline as well at the Akamuran Consulting for this platform. Not only for having me, but actually the whole platform itself, where we can have these conversations. For every listener who is watching this or listening to this, I usually say be someone's shoulder, be someone's hand to hold, be someone's lifesaver. You don't have to be, working in the ICU to save a life. Is that one call that you can receive and save a life? Is that one word that you can speak to someone and change their tear to a smile for one day or even save a life without knowing that? Be kinder in this world that we are living in. I think that's a call I can make to us all. And especially for those who are in managerial positions. It's unfortunate. I think LinkedIn has this portfolio of people so much. For those who are in managerial, tier one, tier two managers, top managers, let us really, really, really appreciate the role of mental health in our companies and all that. As much as you have to be a disciplinarian or a manager to resolve conflicts and all that, at the end of the day, this is a human being. You know, we most of the employees are uh, passing more than 75% of their time in the workplace and not at home. So if the workplace is not healthy enough, there is no way the other 25%, no matter how much the other 25% is healthy, it will not work for this person. Most of the time, these employees at your place, for those who are working full time to be specific, to make that environment for them very healthy, very safe. As much as we want to dispute that Gen Zs are not very resilient when it comes to our work institutions or environments. There's a lot that we need to do. There's a lot that we need to do to change that environment and make it hospitable. It's the fact that millennials were okay with it, the environment being toxic, does not mean we normalize that. We really need to work on our working environments. That's my call to all levels of
Thank you
managers.
for that,
Thank you.
Amos. I think also for me, one call to action is, and this is on a national or even international perspective, We need to have legislations that are supportive of mental well-being. What we fail to understand is that sometimes when you have unresolved mental situations, it can impact your physical health. There are medical conditions that are as a result of unresolved mental issues. It could be you have stuffed in too much within you, that your body has gotten to a survival mode, that the only way it can send out a warning is you falling sick physically. So we really need to appreciate that. We need to take the time to process things so that we also don't affect the physical side of things. We need to push for legislations that are supportive of better and stronger positive mental work, safe spaces. I appreciate that this is a very sensitive discussion, a topic, and we can have a lot to say. But I thank you for taking the time to show us, ways in which we can do better, be better. And I hope for those that have joined us online or those that will watch the recordings later will find the information very applicable, very relatable to your everyday life. So start with yourself, work on yourself. As they say, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So work on yourself so that you will also come to the realization of the various triggers. And when you work on yourself and you get to that point when you're doing very well, don't feel like the one who's struggling and trailing behind is not doing enough. Everyone's journey is different. So do not be the deterrent of their progress. Be your brother's keeper. I thank you all for joining us this evening. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining Unplugged with Ross. And I will see you on the next episode. Amos, thank you very much. And I'll see you soon. Good night, everyone. Bye.